Hi, I'm Anatole, and this is my review of Twilight Zone, the original series, Season 1, Episode number 9? No, sorry, Episode 11, titled And When the Sky Was Opened. Received a score of 8.5 on IMDb. And this is so in this season so far, there was only one other episode I remembered, and that was the classic one with Burgess Meredith, Time Enough at Last. And so apart from that, this is the other series of the ones I've reviewed that I've always remembered. And my history with Twilight Zone, my first exposure to it was from the channel, the Los Angeles channel, KTVLA, Channel 5. During 4th of July, it would have a marathon, all 4th of July of Twilight Zone. And I distinctly recall seeing this episode during that marathon for the first time. And even all these years later, it was quite distinct in my mind. As I was watching it, there were no surprises. Nothing was a revelation. It was burned in my mind. But the one thing that was surprising to me was I was a bit more critical about the episode. And I think that's because, mainly from my series of reviews of the show and looking into the history of the production, I've had a sharper eye for the writing of Rod Serling now that I've learned how quickly he wrote those episodes. And so where I can see flaws, it's usually because I attribute it to the writing of Rod Serling being too haphazard. And so when I saw this episode again, I think I was more critical of the fact that the central mystery, just what is making these astronauts disappear, is never revealed. It's just left to be the unknown. And I thought maybe that was the fault of Rod Serling. In other words, I thought that he wrote it so quickly he didn't have time to answer for himself why were these astronauts disappearing. But in looking into the history of the production, the story came from a short story by the renowned writer Richard Matheson. He wrote the novel I Am Legend, which became the movie I Am Vampire, which was recently remade with Will Smith. And so that idea comes from the story itself. Now, Rod Serling took liberties with the story, but the idea of a person who is seeing those around them disappear and no one believes that these people are disappearing, that was translated from the story to the TV episode. But here, rather than being just one character who's observing other people disappear, we see a sequence of people disappearing as the three astronauts. And so the central figure, the main character of the episode, Lieutenant Colonel Clegg, is played by Rod Taylor. It's great seeing him, an actor who was also in The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock. He is the one that relates to us the story of the first astronaut to disappear, and he's telling it to the third astronaut. So he is the second astronaut in this chain, and the conflict is, do we believe him, or is he simply a crazy person? And so even though a lot of the episode is told from flashback, that conflict is strong because we have the viewpoint of Colonel Clegg, and so we want to believe that his story is true, and then we want to see, can he convince this other astronaut that it's true? So there's a lot of the tension between what we see, whether it's real or just a delusion in the mind of the colonel. And so that works very well. There's a lot of that building up. We see a scene of Colonel Clegg and the first astronaut. I can't remember if that is Colonel Harrington. Yeah, Colonel Harrington. We see them at ease in a bar, and so we get to see them before any of the mystery begins to unravel. And then we get to see the progression that Colonel Harrington has from this feeling of unease to discovering that his parents don't even remember who he is, to the utter terror at feeling that he doesn't belong in the universe. And then we get to see that slowly play out in Rod Taylor's character, Colonel Clegg, before we see him disappear. And then through the device of the newspaper headline, where we see the newspaper changes from 3 astronauts return from this ill-begotten flight of the X-20 to 2 astronauts. And that's the hint that reality really is changing, that for both the character and for us, the viewers. And then the headline, 1 astronaut returns, until finally there are no astronauts, and the X-20 that was in this closed off in this empty warehouse is now gone. Everything has been erased. Reality has seen something is wrong and completely changed itself. And so I think that's the crux, that's the main horror of the episode, is this feeling that reality can just rewrite us out of existence, or the feeling that there's something wrong with reality and not knowing exactly why, and that we are just subject to the universe, the whims of the universe, and there's nothing that we can do. And so that's kind of an ultimate horror, a reality that you cannot address. As much as you are aware of this agency of reality that you don't have, you can't ever do anything about it. And so while researching it, so for my research, I read the book Twilight Zone Companion, and then the book Unlocking the every time I do these reviews I forget the name. I think it's Unlocking the Door, the Key to Understanding Twilight Zone. And there's an interesting tidbit in that book, Unlocking the Door. It has the production budget, and I saw that Richard Matheson was paid about $1,000 for the rights to the short story, and then the director of the episode made about $1,500, not much more than the writer. And of the total budget, it was like $45,000 for the episode. The director was paid about $1,000, and I was stunned to learn the director was paid so little. So I did research. What is the director paid on a TV show? And in the middle of that, I learned what the director of a film is paid. And so if you look at Sam Raimi on the Spider-Man film earned about $10 million out of a $200 million budget. And then I saw that, I can't remember what the film was. It one of the Transformer films? The director earned $5 million on a $100 million budget. And apparently, Hollywood film directors earn about that much, 5 to 10%, and TV directors earn about 1%. They earn just the bare minimum. So for a half-hour show, a TV director earns about, I think, as little as $11,000, because the TV runtime on a sitcom is 20 some minutes, and then the director on a drama can earn around $45,000, up to $45,000. So if you have these 1 hour films, 1 hour shows have a budget of $3 to $4 million, and if the director's earning about $45,000, that's roughly 1%, 1.5% of the budget. And so by that accounting, this director of the episode of The Twilight Zone earned around 2.5%, earned more than a normal, usual director of today's Hollywood television episodes. Boy, that is just chump change. I mean, it's a lot, but in comparison to the total budget and what a Hollywood film director makes, I could see why that's where the heat is. It's being a director of a Hollywood film, not a TV show. You get much more money. You get maybe a modicum, maybe you get a smidge, a fraction more notoriety. Tends to be that the directors of the films don't get much notoriety outside of film geeks, but occasionally they can break through. So someone like Sam Raimi, someone like James Cameron can become a celebrity of a sorts on their own, and then you get much more say in the final creation. TV director is working at the whims of the showrunner, whereas the Hollywood film director can shape the film, has much more of a role in shaping the film. Any event, those are my thoughts about the episode and some ramblings about the behind the scenes of it. I do like this episode a lot. So I kind of went from being a fan to being very critical and then back to a fan. And all that had to do with learning about behind the scenes and then thinking about how the intention of Rod Serling was to create this mystery that never gets resolved. And that was going to be the horror, the fact that there is this force that can just write you out and there's no explanation for what caused it. There's no explanation for the why. It's just done and you're gone. And that's a very scary notion. And so that was it for my journey through the fourth dimension. I hope you'll join me again on this channel for my next video. And until then, take care and be well. Goodbye.